Preparing to live stream, setting up your meeting for custom streaming service. Yes, it looks like it did it.
Huzzah.
So I just have to hit start then because it went to the page.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. Hold on.
Do I have to actually hit start on it, play on it because it...
You shouldn't. No, it's... Let me... No, it's running now. I can see it running now.
Oh, okay. Okay. Because I don't have it pushed on play. It just isn't showing that it's running for me.
Yeah, you don't have to. It just starts.
Okay. So
sorry, everybody. About those, we've been having technical difficulties all day, so this is us just wrapping up those technical difficulties.
Right, and we've got 3 minutes to the official start, so this is the time to actually figure out our technical difficulties. Yay!
Yay! But I'm getting confirmation that everybody is seeing it good and well.
Okay.
So my name is Melissa. I am the chair of Condor, which is presenting Condex this year's convention. And this is Janae. And she will be reading her, is it your most recent novella?
It's my most recent.
So, and maybe if we don't finish it today, we can schedule something and do another one of these.
Possibly.
Down the future. But I'm going to mute myself and dip out of here so that she can get to reading. Enjoy, and I look forward to seeing everybody at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock at in the happy hour.
In the yeah. All right. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm going to be reading from my novella, Naidin Song Twins. It is a prequel to Naidin Song Bloodbound. I scheduled this reading when we weren't sure if we were going to get our pre-recorded that would go on at this time, and unfortunately we did not get that, so we're sorry we were not actually able to have Jarrell Hall here, but we wanted to make sure that you had something, so I am going to read from my novella, Naidin Song Twins. Chapter 1, Kaladin's first verse. Today was wintertide, the day of their birth. Moreover, it was their 10th annual, their name day. No longer could they be called by their baby names. The elder twin sat on his bed across from the younger. His brother, of all days to be caught in a dreaming, was still fast asleep. He looked around the room full of trappings of childhood. Toys, puzzles, and games lined the shelves, only half visible in the gloom. The light filtered through the slatted shutters. He would miss their home and parents. He supposed every dwarfling did. But unlike the others, he'd have his twin. He sniffed at the air. The smells of the kitchen were absent this morning. Right, fasting, he huffed. Not fair, considering the earthen folk celebrated wintertide, with feasts beginning at sunrise. He heard a short rap on the door before his parents entered. He smiled at them. Good morning, father, mother. His father nodded and frowned when he saw his brother still sleeping. Mereda, I'll carry the boy to the bathhouse. Hopefully he'll wake before he's presented. His mother nodded and held out her hand. Come, my son. He slid from the bed and jammed his feet into his slippers as she pulled him up. Yes, mother. He followed close behind his father, his mother's hand between his shoulder blades, a constant gentle nudge forward. Steam billowed out of the bathhouse door like the fog rolling into the valley, the damp air a heavy warm blanket, scented with evergreen oils. He kicked off his slippers as he shed his night and small clothes before easing into the fragrant hot water. His parents stripped his brother and lowered him into the shallow seat alcove in the bath. His twin sighed and curled up into his side. He positioned himself to support his brother's head above the water. His brother's lids fluttered open, his pupils dilated from the vestige of his dreaming. He rubbed his brother's back. What did you see? His twin shook his head. Doesn't make sense. Enough talking, boys, their mother's stern tone left little room for complaint. Wash. He gave his sleepy brother a push, then reached for the soap and brush. Something in his parents' demeanor bothered him. He strained his ears as the door closed behind them. You saw. Youngest. Ill. Brother. How do. Tell the elder. Twin. Be dead. Forbidden. Speak. Today. He could hear the despair in his mother's voice as his mind raced to fill in the missing words. We don't, his father's voice carried better. He'll know when the priests sever their bond. Even he knows, as of sunrise today, it is forbidden to address or refer to them by their baby names. His heart beat hard against his breastbone, hearing his father's words. So don't younger not get name? Let choose temple or out? He looked over at his twin to find him floating on his back in the steaming water, oblivious to the conversation on the other side of the door. His mother continued through her crying, masking her words. He crawled over out of the bath and crept to the door. I suppose we are, his father's voice lowered. You let take birth. He pressed his ear to the door as his mother replied, I couldn't, not when my dreamings tell me our sons' names will be known throughout the world. Names. Mother's dreamings indicated their names. He sighed in relief. He wished he'd had dreamings that guided him. His twins seemed to have inherited the ones meant for him as well. I know, as have I. It is why I have denied them every time they've tried to take him since the dreaming started. Mereda, we must trust in the dreamings we've been sent. He turned to see his brother staring at him, an eyebrow raised. He shook his head and rejoined his twin in the water. Should he worry his brother with what he'd heard, or trust his mother's dreamings? He pulled the gray woven spider silk and rabbit hair trousers on. Mother, these are a bit tight, he complained. His mother looked up from braiding his brother's hair. They'll do for today. You won't need them after. He thought, why not? You will wear school robes, his father replied, and draped his sapphire blue silk sash bordered in silver geometric pattern. The area at his hip held the crest of the house Nerhed, embroidered in gold, silver, and copper thread. He fingered the edge of the staff. It went well with the emerald green spider silk tunic. Wear it proudly. You are the elder son of the second line, his father said as he squeezed his shoulder. His brother fingered the silver and copper border on his own sash. His stomach grumbled as they made their way to the mountain halls. The smells of the bonfires and roasting meat wafted up from the river valley, making him more aware of the festivities they were missing. No celebration delayed one's name day, not even one as important and grand as Wintertide. His brother trudged alongside, his brow knit in concentration, a clear sign he mulled over his latest dreaming. He wished he'd discuss it with him. He flicked his brother in the back of the head. Ow! His twin glared over at him and retaliated with a punching him in the arm. You going to tell me what's going on in that head of yours? He shook his head. Not now. When our naming is done. They followed the priests into the temple area. Lord Greason wasn't present to give their lesson. A priest of Kyrian met them at the door instead. Come, boys. The priest beckoned them and led them from their parents to the contemplation pool. Nerhed House consecrates the younger twin to the temple. The priest urged them to their knees, a hand on their heads. Lord Greason made his wish known to uphold the tradition. You have reached your naming day. The choice to follow the tradition belongs to you. Either or both of you could offer yourself to the body of Kyrian and never take a name. You also can both choose to ignore your house's tradition. A gentle smile graced his twin's face. It is not my calling, nor Kyrian's will. The calmness his twin spoke with made his heart soar with pride. True, he could take his brother's place and satisfy Lord Greason's sense of honor. However, lacking the dreamings, he felt apart from his people. He could not become part of that which he had no affinity. Sit here and think on your futures until you are called to the grand hall for your namings. The priest left them. Once the priest's footsteps faded away, he heard his twin snort as he elbowed him. I have a better idea than staring at a pool on our knees all day. He turned to look at his brother. What? The inner lake. He followed his twin down the winding crevasses that led to the deep subterranean lake. His brother found it when they had been gathered in the mountain for the feast of Kirin. Soon they'd be too big to squeeze through. We shouldn't be doing this. Shush, his twin hissed. They'll find us by the echo. He sighed. There was no dissuading his twin when he wanted to do something. They made their way by feel as the light faded. Blue flashes of bioluminescent light at the end of their trail as water dripped into the lake. His brother picked up a flat stone and flicked it across the surface of the water, setting off multiple explosions of light. After he watched his brother skip for a few more stones on the lake, he shrugged and joined him. Chapter 2, Naidin's first verse. Run, we can't be late. He looked over at his brother and beckoned his brother. He looked over his shoulder and beckoned his brother before racing off through the halls. They would be in serious trouble if they arrived after sunset. It was their naming ceremony after all. The other shook his head and groaned. It was your idea to skip stones on the lake, and now you're in a hurry? The elder twin sprinted after him. He didn't have to agree, skidding to a halt. He turned and made a face at his brother. His twin stumbled as he burst out laughing. Their mother grabbed hold of her laughing child's arm. By Kirin, what is with you two? Of all the days to choose to find mischief. This ended his brother's laughter, whose arm was caught in her strong grip. Sorry, mother. He gulped, expecting a reprimand. No one had spoken their baby names all day, which had given him the wicked idea of running off for fun before the ceremony. No one could call them back, as they had no names since sunrise. Do you wish the dishonor of being nameless until your next birthing day? She looked at them, her brows knit in disapproval. No, mother, he bowed his head. We lost track of time. Their mother's face softened into a smile as she looked them over. At least you remain presentable. She slipped her hand down his brother's arm, to clasp his hand as she captured his own in the other. Stand straight, heads up. She led them to the archway to the grand hall. Their Father Thalin stood before Lord Greason, the head of Nereid House. His sigh of relief at seeing his sons visible even at a distance. Their father turned and bowed his head. My lord, I present to you my sons, who on this day have reached their 10th annual of their birth. Twins are rare, cousin, Lord Greason tapped their father to rise, for both to survive to their naming rarer still. He turned to the opening where his sons and wife waited. Mereda, bring them forward. She nodded. Keeping hold of their hands, she brought them before Lord Greason. She nudged their eldest forward. He took a step forward and knelt before the head of their house, with his face raised up. Lord Greason tapped the dwarfling's head. From this moment forward, you are Kaladin, son of Thalin of Nereid House. Kaladin bowed his head once he received his name. I thank you, my lord, for giving me the honor of a name. Rise and stand behind me. Kaladin did as instructed. As he turned around, he smiled at the younger, felt his mother nudge him forward. He followed his brother's example. Lord Greason looked down at him, and he met the gaze of the head of his house. He remained silent under the Lord's scrutiny. The pause caused nervous side glances between their parents. Kaladin's smile faded as he watched him continue to kneel, awaiting his name. It is not often one gives a name to both twins. It is said twins are harbingers of change. Whether it is for good or ill, one often wonders. It was not I who received the dreaming for your name, young one. Only your brother's was given to me. It was the king to whom your name was revealed. Had it been any other, I would reject it and give you the choices of entering the temple or to be cast out nameless. Before I give it, I ask you to honor our house's tradition and enter the priesthood of your own volition. He resisted looking away. To allow the fact his name was not given to his house's lord to bring him shame would be to reject it. To refuse a name or be unworthy of one meant exile. the only option his dreaming left him. He raised his chin higher in defiance, his gaze locked eye to eye with Lord Greason. "It is not my calling, my lord, my dreamings forbid it." As sunset chimes began, the lord sighed. He reached out a hand and tapped his forehead, as he had his brother's. "From this moment forward, you are Naidin, son of Thalin, of Nered House." Naidin bowed his head, relief washing over him. "I thank you, my lord, for giving me the honor of a name. Rise and join your brother. You both leave your parents' house for the halls of learning. You may have a moment with them." He gestured to the door opposite where they'd entered. "Afterwards, you both go through that door." He stalked out of the grand hall. Naidin looked at his parents. "I am sorry, I almost brought dishonor on our family." His father placed a hand on his shoulder. "My esteemed cousin has a quarrel with me. You held your head high. It was he who tried to bring dishonor, not you, Naidin." His father smiled, saying his son's name for the first time. "I couldn't be prouder of you and Kaladin, my sons." Naidin felt his brother's arm wrap around his shoulders. He snaked his own around his brother's waist. "I'll miss you, mother, father." Kaladin nodded. "We both will." The mother put a hand on their shoulders. "We will miss you too. I am with your father. I couldn't be prouder of the two of you. This is not the last we'll see of you today. The Wintertide Starlight Feast is tonight. Consigned to the halls doesn't keep you from your family on the festivals." He ruffled both their heads. "No, go get settled. We'll see you at the bonfire." The twins followed the corridor to the halls of learning. The passage opened into a chamber with many doors, one of which stood open. They continued through the open door, down a short hall that opened into a reception area. They approached the desk of their 10-year house mother. She looked up from her papers and regarded them with blue eyes. "Bless my eyes," she winked at them, her voice full of warmth and mirth. "Am I seeing double?" "No, mistress," Naidin bowed. "I am Naidin, son of Thalin of House Nered." His brother followed suit. "I am Kaladin, son of Thalin of House Nered." "Welcome, young masters. I am House Mother Dija." She placed 2 sets of clothes and bedding in front of them. "Go change to your uniforms. Your dormitory is through the door to the left. Pick from the unclaimed beds." "Yes, mistress." Kaladin took the bundles, handing half to Naidin. "Tonight we join the feast of the Wintertide Festival. The other students are spending the day with their kin. After tomorrow's fast, for the day of introspect, all your meals will be taken in the school's refectory, other than the festivals. You will join your families on such days. You, however, will wear only your uniforms until you are released to apprentice in your chosen trades. Then your tenure concludes." She looked at their finery. "Your family is highly placed in their house. On Kirian's feast day, you will wear your family's colors and your sashes for all other festivals." "Yes, Mr. Dija," they answered. Naidin followed close behind Kaladin, his stomach roiled now that his trial was over. His dreaming said he could not choose to pledge to the temple. It took the fear of exile not to look away. He glanced around the room of 6 bunks. 2 of the top mattresses had no bedding. One was to the left as they entered. The other was at the back of the on the right. Naidin bit his lip. Kaladin dropped his uniforms in the first open chest and climbed up to make his bed. Naidin bowed his head and shuffled to the back. Too far, he sighed as he took to the last bunk. His bunkmate he stripped out of his best clothes and changed into the uniform his house sash draped over it. The heavy coarse wool made him itch. He closed his eyes and smiled as his brother tugged his hair. "Thank you, Kaladin." "When I finish removing your braid, you can do mine," Kaladin chuckled. "If you want, you can call me Cal." "Huh? Oh, I'm not used to our names." He tugged at his sleeve. "I think I like Cal, though." "Stop fidgeting, Nay." Naidin wrinkled his nose. "Sounds more like you're making a pony sound," he snorted. "Let's not shorten mine." Cal leaned against his brother, laughing. "True. Shall I remove yours now?" "Aye." Well then, let go. He struggled out of Kaladin's hug and moved behind to undo the braid down his brother's back. His hands shook as he unwound the plait. Naidin, are you well? I feared I wouldn't get my name. He combed out Kaladin's hair with his trembling fingers. There. I would have gone into exile with you. I wouldn't have let you, he whispered. We should go to the bonfire now. Kaladin gave Naidin a shove towards the door. After having to fast for our naming, I'm starved. I don't think I can eat. Naidin shuffled out the door, his brother following behind him. Carry and comfort my soul and guide me. His twin caught up beside him and draped his arm over his shoulder. Naidin gave Kaladin a half smile as he wrapped his arm around his brother's waist. A sense of peace settled over him after the stress-filled day. He took a deep breath and let it out slow. Dija waited in the grand hall for them. Let's get you to your house table, shall we? There was a jounce to her step as she headed towards the exit. Naidin felt at ease with the roundhouse mother. She seemed to walk to a rhythm of a song only she could hear, her tight curls bouncing ever so slightly, and she bobbed her head. He felt his own feet pick up the cadence she set, causing Kaladin to stumble as they walked arm in arm. Sorry, Naidin bit his lip as he held back laughter. No, you're not, Kaladin disengaged and swatted him on the back of the head. Soon they were out in the snow and trudging down the path to the valley. Their breath coalesced in the chill air. The moon shone bright in the clear sky, and the arc of the ring cut a swath through the luminous stars. Dija stopped at the clearing near the last stair. I will wait for everyone here once the feast ends. Yes, mistress, the brothers replied. Naidin reached for another roll to sop up the gravy on his plate. His stomach felt as if he'd been feasting all day rather than fasting, and still he stuffed himself more. He more than found his appetite once the smells of roasted meat met his nose. Kaladin elbowed him in the ribs. You'll give yourself a stomachache. He looked over at his twin's plate with the remains of his meal. Have to make up for missing the earlier meals. He stuffed the soaked bread into his mouth. Lord Greason sat down across from the twins, next to their father. His cold stare succeeded where Kaladin's rebuke had not. Naidin set the half-eaten roll on his plate and pushed it away. Named or no, you can still choose to honor our house's tradition when you choose your vocation in 10 annuals, or preferably in 5 rather than exploring the trades. The terseness of his tone made Naidin cringe. Am I to deny Kirian's will then? Presumptuous child. Leave him be, cousin, Kaladin glared at Greason. House traditions are not laws written stone. Traditions bring order, Lord Greason said, banging his fist on the table, and your family defies my will. Am I not the keeper of our house's interest? Of what interest is forcing Naidin into the priesthood? Maraed asked. I promised him to the body of Kirian once it was known you carried twins, he glared at Maraed. I have already lost honor in the fact he is now named. The best I can hope for is that he serves as priest to care for those part of the body. That sect loses more favor as the years pass. It is nothing more than a cult that enslaves babies to constant dreamings. Maraed stood up, her hands on her hips. Thalin, I warned you against wedding this heretic. Leave my mother alone, Naidin shot to his feet. It is not Kirian's will I serve him as part of the body, nor as a priest. I will let him guide me where he will, as I serve him, not you, my lord. Greason's eyes narrowed. How do you serve him, child? By honoring the dreamings he sends me. He forbade me to choose the priesthood. Had you refused to bestow my name, I would have trusted him to protect me in my exile. Naidin blinked back tears. As long as you remain outside the temple, I will not condone any choice you make. You are in fact sanctioned for refusing my will. Lord Greason held out his hand. Hand me your sash. Naidin frowned. I don't understand. And me? Kaladin asked. As long as you uphold our traditions, you are spared your twin's sanction. But what does it mean, my lord? Naidin pleaded, his fingers tracing the edge of his new sash. It means exactly what I said, child. You do not have the support of my house in any path you take outside the temple. I've been taught that our dreamings are sacred gifts, not to be ignored. How can I follow your will when it is against Kirian's? Are not our dreamings from him? The priest who met them earlier approached the table. The child is correct, Lord Greason. If his dreamings forbid it, he would be amiss in choosing to enter the temple. Did you not assure me he was meant for Kirian's service? Naidin is. I am more certain of it now that his name is known. One so named is in the dreamings of the temple. However, it is for Kirian to guide him where he will use him. Naidin sighed and took his seat. The priest's words gave him confidence and a sense of peace. The priest continued. What do your dreamings tell you, Lord Greason? I see his brother leaving our lands, and darkness follows him. I see nothing, not even his name. It was the king who received the dreaming of it. Our dreamings say our sons' names will be known throughout the world, Fallon announced. So yes, Kaladin will likely leave as your dreamings show, cousin, as will Naidin. What darkness you see in what when we see hope, I cannot fathom. Lord Greasing glared at the priest. I will get to the bottom of what poison seeps into our ways and taints even the dreamings of the temple. I will seek no more counsel outside those that tend the body of Kirian. If the twins are allowed to follow this path, it will destroy our ways. That sect is flawed. Those chambers are from where our first mothers and fathers were born under Kirian and his consort's hand. All earthen folk are part of the body of Kirian, as he is our creator and giver of dreamings, the priest replied. Is it not better those that could not live otherwise be put in them and give glory to our creator? It may have started as a kindness to those unable to live outside their mother's womb, but tell me, what defect lies in a younger twin that your house consigns them to such a fate? Neither twin is whole as long as they both walk in the world. Lord Greason looked over at him and Kaladin. Tell the priest when you both last had dreamings. This morning, Naidin answered. Kaladin shook his head. I have no dreamings. I guard my brother while Kirian communes with him. The priest regarded them a moment. Why do you feel you need to guard him? His dreamings can last for days. Would not the support of being part of the body have been better for the boy? Lord Greason gestured to Naidin. I see a healthy dwarfling, one that may need his brother's support, but whole in mind and body. The priest shook his head. The darkness you fear is in your own heart, Lord Greason. And what if his brother isn't there when his dreamings last days? The priest arched a brow. Kirian, I'm certain, would not send such long dreamings if his guardian were absent. Don't you see, the boy does not need to enter the temple, nor the body. He is already in service to Kirian. The child is born to the priesthood and follows where he is ordained. A compromise, then. I will not remove his sash. Lord Greason looked at all present. If he is schooled in the temple as well. Naidin's senses faded as he began dreaming. Words echoed in his mind. Accept. Be on guard. The world around him rushed back in. He looked around at the concerned faces, the haze of the dreaming clearing. A waking dreaming. What says Kirian, Naidin? The priest bowed to him. To accept. He then turned to the head of his house. I will take studies in the temple as well. It is you that will teach us, child. The priest bowed again before turning to Lord Greason. You truly do not see what the boy is. Your traditions blind you. I wonder how many such as Naidin were denied us by your house aligning with the body. And what is it I do not see? An avatar, one so filled with the spirit of our Creator that he is, in fact, one with Kirian. I am not Kirian, Naidin scowled. Of course, child, the priest laughed. You are his messenger, and in time, he will reveal your purpose. Do not indulge the child, Greason sneered. The priest raised an eyebrow. I see why his name was not given to you. Had it been, you would have withheld it. With the king being the one given it, you were forced to bestow it. Lord Greason jabbed his finger into Naidin's chest. He will bring darkness. The darkness is in you, Lord Greason, the priest admonished. I will preserve our ways, Lord Greason said as he left. Cal? Hmm? Naidin took a deep breath and exhaled in careful measure. I don't want to be special. What makes you think you are? His brother shoved him. The priest said I'm an avatar. It's just a type of priest. Naidin shook his head. What do I know of guiding the earthen folk in Kirian's teachings? Kaladin shrugged. Don't start doubting your dreamings now. Naidin shoved his twin as they trudged up the stair, causing him to stumble forward. What? You are definitely not special. Dija called out to them. Stop roughhousing on the stair and join the rest of us. 4 groupings of dwarflings stood waiting in the clearing. One of the groups of boys held only 10, the other had 12, as did one of the girls. The other group of girls held 7. Naidin grinned at the house mother. Sorry, mistress. Join your dorm mates. Naidin grabbed Kaladin's hand and pulled him into the smaller group. They stood in 2 columns with gaps. Seeing them lined up so, Naidin let his brother's hand go. With the head bowed and shoulders slumped, moved to the empty spot at the back, leaving Kaladin to fill the one in the front. Once in place, Dija addressed the dwarflings. We welcome Kaladin and Naidin, sons of Thalin of Nereid House. With our addition to the last of the dwarflings born in your year have arrived, and your studies will begin after tomorrow's day of introspect. Introduce yourselves now, as tomorrow you are now of age, where you will remain silent and fasting after the feasts of wintertide. The dwarfling next to Naidin smiled and said, I'm Jer, son of Mulk of House Phelan. Naidin's son, no need to recite the whole. You've been introduced, Jer chuckled. Am I right that the order is our bunks? Aye. I am 3rd top left. The dwarfling before him turned. Welcome, Naidin. We're bunkmates. I'm Luke, son of Rin, of House Phelan, Jer's cousin. Soon the boys had all exchanged their names and those of the other 3 groups. Dija led them back to the dorms. The chatter ended as they entered. Naidin dropped his gaze to the floor and pursed his lips tight together. He stood waiting his turn to enter his room. He recited the invocation in his mind when he noticed Jer had begun his turn. Kirian, clear my mind, so I may think. Kirian, clear my eyes, so I may see. Kirian, clear my ears, so I may hear. Kirian, open my heart, so I may love. Kirian, guide me, so I am not lost. Kirian, guard me, so I need not fear. After the 5th cycle, he walked into the dorm. He resisted looking to his brother's bunk as he entered. Among the soft sounds of the other 11 breathing, he could pick out Kaladin's familiar sound. He paused and let the cycle run in his head again, pulling his thoughts inward before retrieving his nightshirt from the chest. He bit his lip to keep from gasping as the shock of the cold as he splashed himself in the fall in the bathing room. He greatly preferred a soak in steaming water to a cold rinse. Purified, dried, and dressed, he made his way to his bunk and climbed in. He forced down the panic of not being nearer Kaladin and drifted off to sleep, repeating the invocation in his head. Chapter 3, Kaladin's 2nd verse. Kaladin climbed out of his bunk, changed to his school robes, and then headed for the sanctuary. He knelt staring into the still pool, a wee smile turning the corners of his mouth as he thought of the day before and his brother resisting the name day meditation. Or had he? There was something more thought-provoking in skipping stones on the cavern lake than kneeling beside a pool. Try as he might, he could not get his mind to turn inwards. Regardless of he remained kneeling all day. His empty stomach plagued him, as did his thoughts. He worried about his brother. He couldn't say why. He just knew deep inside something was not as it should be. It occurred to him that none of the feet he'd seen all day were his brother's. The chime sounded, letting him know he could return to the room for sleep. He rose to his feet, stretched his legs to return the circulation before hurrying back to the dorm. He made his way to his brother's bunk, and there he could hear the deep breathing that indicated Naidin's dreamings. Kaladin felt remiss, Having left his brother by himself all day, the priest had called him Naidin's guardian. Thinking about it, he knew it to be true. Yet he had left the room without checking on his brother. Did the day of introspect excuse his duty? His unease all day gave him the answer he sought. He should never have left his brother's side when in a dreaming. Let Mistress Dija reprimand him for breaking custom. He crawled up into Naidin's bunk with him and pulled his brother close. Lord Greason said that they were not whole as long as both walked in the world. Perhaps they were meant they were only whole together. Calm settled over him. His thoughts felt right. Naidin's breath settled into a gentler rhythm and his brow unfurrowed. Kaladin let himself drop off to sleep. Chapter 4, Naidin's second verse. Naidin awoke to Kaladin being scolded by Mistress Dija. He blinked sleep from his eyes and sat up. Kaladin stood defiant just below him. If it is not me and his, it'll be him and mine. Moving one of us to another room won't stop us. If you don't want one of you sent to live in another clan, you will both have to stay in your own beds. Her features were downcast. The prospect of separating them by force appeared distasteful to her. Other than arriving last, is there any reason one could not be asked to move so we share the same set? Naidin asked. Kaladin and Mistress Dija both looked up at him. Dija shook her head. I know twins can share a bond near equal to a mating bond. All the more reason you boys need to learn some level of separation. Naidin sighed. Kaladin shook his head. Not when he's in a dreaming. The priest called me his guardian at the feast. She crossed her arms, looking at both of them. After a bit, she threw up her hands. Get dressed. We'll sort this later. Naidin watched the house mistress shovel out of the room. He raised an eyebrow and looked down at his brother. You were in my bunk? Aye, you were caught in a dreaming all day. I missed the day of introspect? Naidin frowned. Since when does missing meditation bother you? Kaladin called over his shoulder as he went to go dress. I meditate, just not how they want me. Naidin crawled down. He noted that he and Kaladin were alone in the room. Mistress DJ had dressed them in private. He pulled a scratchy robe over his head and belted it. He then shoved his feet into the slippers as he could not find his boots. He ran a brush through his hair, haphazard enough to remove the tangles, but not tame his wild locks. Kaladin stood at the door waiting. What did your dreaming show? Naidin shook his head as he walked past his brother. Nothing I can make sense of yet. A priest stood in the front of the room. He smiled at the assembled dwarflings. Welcome. I will be your academic instructor. You may call me Master Leon. You have had your first participation in a day of introspect. I would like you all to tell what you learned about yourselves. Nikta, the oldest of the girls in their birth year, snorted. That it's hard to keep my mind clear? The room erupted in whispers of agreement. True, it is very difficult to keep our minds void of any thoughts. What thought entered your mind? That I wished I had a slice of bread, warm from the oven. What does bread like that mean to you? Naidin watched the expression play across Nikta's face. It makes me happy. Why? Leon asked, prodded. It reminds me of my grandmother. The priest smiled. Do you have other thoughts? She opened her mouth to speak and then shut it. A frown creased her face. They all had to do with baking. And your grandmother? No, she's the one who taught me, though. Perhaps you will be a baker as your trade. The other dwarflings offered their prominent thoughts during the meditation to the priest. He nudged them in turn with questions that made some sense of what they learned. Kaladin finally spoke. My mind wandered to my brother, the fact he isn't very good at sitting still to meditate. I cleared my mind after that and thought nothing. Something felt wrong. Lan raised an eyebrow and asked, what felt wrong? While I knelt beside the pool, I could not place it. When it was time to go, I knew it was wrong. Naidin was not with us. Naidin lowered his head. He'd caused his brother stress when he should have been learning more about himself. Naidin, Why were you not with the others? He breathed in deep, letting it out slow and measured before answering. I was caught in a dreaming. What insight did Kirian give you? He furrowed his brow and shook his head. I do not understand what I saw. You will when your visions come to pass, the priest smiled. It is true, then, an avatar and his guardian. You will both walk a difficult path in the future. Luke stood. Lan nodded to him. Speak. What is an avatar? One with greater affinity with our Creator. They are priests born to their calling and directed by Kirian through intense dreamings. They do not enter the temple to serve, nor are they subject to the restrictions of other clergy. Naidin sunk in his seat. The other dwarflings turned to stare at his direction. All their eyes on him caused him to grow hot as blood rushed to his face. Treat him as you would any other dwarfling, their instructor admonished. The others murmured as they returned to their attention to the priest. Master Lane continued. Now that we have discussed your first day of introspect, we will move on to governance. Naidin grinned and swung his feet in anticipation. The houses began with the first fathers. Our writings tell us. Each woke on a different day. This order became their ranking. The first to wake was Nereid. Naidin frowned. How could that be? The king was not a member of their house, nor the kings of the other 3 clans. Lord Greason would rule if their house were ranked so high. Not wanting to draw more attention, he kept his thoughts to himself. At one time, there were no clans, and the tunnels our people lived in during that time of ice were connected. A great earthquake collapsed thoroughfares, sundering the earthen folk into 4 communities. These became the 4 clans, each ruled by their king. It was not until the last avatar walked among us that we were reunited with our lost kin. One of the girls nodded. One of the girls stood. Halia, you have a question, Master Lane asked. Why are some in house considered lesser than others? For order, the eldest members of the house sits on the council and represents all under them. The next eldest in line of the family ranks as second and can sit on behalf of their house should the elder line be unavailable. All others are equal. Chapter 5, Kaladin's third verse. As they readied to return to the dorms, Master Lane approached them. The edict that Naidin takes studies in the temple does not extend to you, Kaladin, he smiled. However, I would be loath to separate a guardian from their charge. Will you take lessons alongside your brother? Would I? Could it help me protect Naidin? Am I allowed? All are welcome who wish to learn. It is a shame it is forced on your brother. I will, Kaladin nodded. Are guardians also a type of priest? What do you think? Kaladin rolled his eyes. That you don't know. Then perhaps you and Naidin can teach us something. The last an avatar walked amongst our people. He opened our halls to the sky. Is an avatar always a twin? Naidin asked. Yes, in fact, always the second. The priest squeezed Naidin's shoulder. We don't understand why, but the first never receives dreamings, though the avatar's dreamings are considered to belong to both. Kaladin smiled at as Naidin turned to him, a scowl on his face. I'm sorry I do not always share them. He flicked Naidin on the forehead. I don't mind when you contemplate them first. His brother rubbed his forehead and stuck out his tongue. Some dreamings will be meant for you alone, Naidin, Master Lane beckoned them to follow. As their class returned to the dorms, he and Naidin followed the priest to the temple. He led them to the sparse room, just a bench in the middle. Soft glow of the ceiling bathed the room in white light. He knew the dorm had light balls, but to see a whole ceiling illuminated made him catch his breath. Their humble home used oil lamps and candles. Your family lives outside the mountain, do they not? Kaladin nodded. Aye. First time seeing one of the ancient light rooms? The twins nodded. Sit, the priest gestured to the bench. Kaladin placed his hand on the small of Naidin's back and moved him to the bench. As they settled in, Naidin looked up at Master Lane. What now? Lane produced two spheres, one of malachite and the other of azurite. I believe these stones represent your baby names. Which to whom? Kaladin took the malachite orb and Naidin the azurite. Concentrate on the spheres. Think only of them. See only them. When you have shut out all else out, you should be able to hear the music. Music? Naidin asked. Kirian's song. It is said in our early days we did not have dreamings, that we heard music, and those drawn to it became our first priests. Kaladin furrowed his brow. Why do we have dreamings now? Kirian may guide us, but he does not control us. Many priests withheld his teachings from the others, sharing only what they saw fit. Why are there still priests then? Naidin cocked his head. To gather and keep the knowledge we are given. He smiled. I will return shortly. Kaladin turned on the bench to put his back against his brother's. He held the malachite orb in his hands. The weight of it served as a reminder of his task. He noticed the coolness of the stone warm to match his hands as he traced the banded lines with his eyes. He felt calmness wash over him as the faint notes of song reached his ears. Or did it? The music contained an ethereal quality. More than that, he realized the song came from inside him. He could feel it more than hear it as a vibration that started in the belly, washing over out in waves, making his fingers and toes tingle. A tear slipped down his face. He finally felt a part of his people. He latched onto the strange melody, his mind flooded with images of distant lands. The visions faded as footfalls drowned out the music. He sighed as he found himself staring at the malachite in his hands. He turned to see the priest return. Master Lane, does a song bring dreamings when it is heard? What did you see, Kaladin? Leon asked. Places with strange peoples and buildings, lakes that rushed up onto the land and so vast I could not see the far shore, buildings that floated and moved on the water, tree-like spires rising from them draped with great curtains. Naidin turned towards him, a huge grin on his face and his eyes twinkling. My dreamings yesterday showed the same. Leon chuckled. It would seem a guardian is capable of dreamings through the hearing of Kirian's song of old. What does the dreamings mean? Kaladin frowned as he tried to make sense of the images. Now he understood his twin's earlier answer. Dreamings of those in the temple, as well as those of your parents, give the answer. You will travel far from here. I don't know which human or starborn cities you might have seen. However, the water is likely the seas or oceans, great salty bodies of water, with floating buildings would be ships and the curtained sails. You have seen a boat. Ned nodded. Father took us fishing last summer on the river. Ships are more like larger boats. The ones in your dreamings are moved by the winds. Kaladin considered the priest and Naidin's words. Have you traveled, Master Lan? Once, when I was young, Lan nodded. I was chosen to go out and observe. I traveled with a trade caravan to the seaport of Lysandra. Will you teach us about your journey? Kaladin perked up. We can include some of your lessons in the temple, the priest smiled. You may both return to your dorm. Take the orbs, practice finding Kirian's song. This is it? Our lesson? Naidin inquired. It is the beginning. Kaladin crawled into his bunk and pulled out the malachite orb and placed it on his chest, his hands wrapped around the smooth surface. The low light of sleep time obscured the banded pattern. Still, he traced the patterns best he could, letting it fill his mind. He awoke well rested, if nothing else. The song and visions had eluded him. And being that we're getting close to 6 o'clock, I know it's about 15 minutes to there, but I would go into I'm afraid I'd go into the next thing, which is our happy hour. So anybody listening to me read, it's probably about a third of the way through the story. If you're interested, this book is available at Mysterious Galaxy as well. Again, this is my novella, which is a prequel to my other book that came out in 2016, which is a novelette. And it is the first prequel of what will be two that go over Naidin and Kaladin's adventures. So thank you for listening. And I hope to see some of you. I probably won't be at the happy hour myself because I'm going to travel home because I'm sitting in an office, and I will be back for the Filksing. So hopefully some of you will come join us at the Filksing. Again, please see our sponsor, Mysterious Galaxy, for books by our guest today, L.L. McKinley, my own book. There are also some books by some of our other local authors, Maria Andre and Cynthia Diamond, I know is there. And the first book by one of our previous guests who we lost this summer, H. Paul Hunsinger. His first book is available at Mysterious Galaxy as well. And please go to our Facebook page and find our vendor hall and patronize our vendors who have things for sale. And again, thank you for coming to my reading, and I hope you enjoyed Naidin's song, Twins. Thank you.